Most people who are listening to this now will know somewhere locally to them that would make a great self-storage place. If they stop and think about it now, I bet they can go, yeah, actually, we could put one there. Or talk to some experts and see if you can turn that into a reality.
Hi and welcome to Locked In. This is the platform where we at Kuboid are going to really talk about stuff. And by stuff, of course, we mean all stuff self-storage. The purpose of this video series is to inform and educate on a number of topics that help bring awareness to the self-storage industry as a whole. Topics such as investment diversification, business planning, building planning, technology insights, etc. Throughout the series, we'll be talking to a number of experts that bring their wealth of knowledge and insights from what's gone right for them, what's gone wrong for them. And hopefully that will give any new entrants or anyone that's interested in coming into the self-storage industry a little bit of help and guidance along the way.
Today, I'm joined by both employees and two very welcome guests. We're joined by Christopher Fletcher, our Sales and Marketing Manager, and Martin Fletcher, our Senior Sales Executive. I'm joined by Charlie Schneider, a self-storage guru and closer of all things self-storage. And I'm also joined by the CEO of the Self-Storage Association, Simon Forrester.
To kind of kick things off for Locked In, we really want to start initially talking about the perception of self-storage and how things are, really from a personal perspective. When I came into the industry just over 3 years ago, I had a perception of the self-storage industry of being like a warehouse type, sort of scenario, a bit bland, not very exciting, excuse me. And really, by and large, that kind of perception hasn't really changed. But whilst in that time, the experiences I've had is that it has moved on a lot since then. So it is a lot more retail and things like that. Obviously, Simon, you're relatively new to the self-storage industry in terms of being the CEO of the SSA. Can you talk about your perceptions and how you maybe thought what self-storage was and where self-storage is now in your mind?
Well, I think my perception was it was almost like Raiders of the Lost Ark style cabinets and piles of boxes everywhere, or it was containers in a field. I have to admit, one of my first jobs at 18 was technically working in self-storage, archiving files for an insurance company, and in a building that's now owned by SoStore. But understanding that perception of it and how that has changed just in the first, less than 100 days in the industry, it's been a massive learning experience for me to see the huge variety of sites and how much care and attention people put into their brand and their product to try and differentiate. I think that's been a real eye-opener for me.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. I think over the last 18 months or so, there is that kind of diversification where people are looking for that different angle to do that. So, we're seeing sites in there's like railway arches and churches and things like this, and abandoned old buildings that you wouldn't even expect to see self-storage in. So what about yourself, Charlie, in terms of...
Well, I had a very quick early education in the market. I worked for one of the fit-out contractors, and so I was taught quite quickly. It was when I had my first site. It's actually when you notice the change in customer approach to self-storage. When they first started ringing, they didn't have a clue what self-storage was. They all used to go down the removal side and storage. And then over the years, people are far more educated now. So they come along, they know what they're looking for. They know the difference kind of between a container and an indoor site. So it does make the sales process a bit easier.
Yeah, got you. And from your perspective then, in terms of when you have someone come and talk to you from a consultancy basis, what sort of advice are you giving early on to somebody? Are you finding people that are sort of really, really new to it, or are they, like you say, seasoned and know exactly what they're after, but they just need you for that little bit of a push?
So I tend to work with owner-operators who are new into the market. That's what I specialise with. I do work with private equity firms coming into the market as well, but they're all new into the market. They've often been inherited, they've left some money or they've sold a business and they're looking to get into a more of a passive income type business. And I guide them through the process. There's obviously pros and cons to going down the container route or the indoor route.
Yeah, of course.
And that's mostly what I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah, good.
It's quite fun.
But I think there's a lot of almost naivety in some of the people that come in to look at self-storage as an opportunity. We've been to some trade shows recently and been having sort of conversations with people from removal side and some farmers who are at such an early stage in that journey. They're literally just going, well, what do I do? They've got no idea. So it's quite, there's that degree of naivety, but the understanding that self-storage is a real opportunity, but it's sort of holding their hand and guiding them through that process that's going to be really crucial to making sure their business is successful. And also they're actually doing self-storage, not just renting containers, because that seems to be in people's heads. Well, that's what you do. You buy some containers, you know, on some empty land, and then they will come. That seems to be in people's idea of it, when obviously, again, in the first 100 days, it's a lot more nuanced, and you've got to build up all your digital and have an offer.
Yeah, of course, exactly. We find a lot anyway in what we do. We see the sort of broad spectrum of the industry, from people that are at that stage, people that are a lot further on. So, you know, I mean, you talk to a lot of customers, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. In the 15 years I've been working at Kuboid, I've seen a real transition from the early days where things were very much on a warehousing kind of feel, but have transitioned into really a boutique hotel kind of retail factor here. And things and level of expectations from the customers is so high now that it's been a real joy to see things come so far forward. And back in those 15 years ago, you know, people's knowledge about self-storage was relatively limited, but now there seems to be a wealth of people understanding what it's all about. And I think that's where the growth in our market has come into play, and certainly in the design has come into play, how things have changed and what people are pushing and the level of expectation that they now require.
And what sort of things are people we seeing now that were against the norm from 10 years ago?
I think just the type of buildings, locations they might be looking at. You know, as you mentioned, we've converted, you know, railway arches and barns and chicken sheds and potato processing plants and grade 2 listed buildings and car parks and basements and, you know, floors of flats and apartments. So I think the buildings that people are now looking at are quite diverse. And whether that fits the model that it's going to be a very viable business by looking at that level of diversity is something where I think Charlie and the expertise we have here at Kuboid would really help people. But I think one of the things that's really interesting to me is the amount of people that come to us first, you know, within this sector.
Yeah.
You know, obviously we fit out the self-storage facilities. And they do reach out to us first, thinking that that's probably the only thing that they need to consider to be a successful offering in the market. And there is still a level of education that needs to be go on. There are so many factors to think about to have a competitive, viable, you know, future-proof self-storage business. You know, whether it's insurance, whether it's access control, whether it's automation or store software or websites or marketing. There's a lot of things that people do not think about, and they'll pick up the phone and speak to us first. And in some regard, we're kind of a bit further down that chain.
Yeah.
But it's really great we get those people. You know, we get to help them, hold their hand, educate them in the market, and really steer them in the right way. But I think the diversity of what people are now looking at, whether it's, you know, whether it's COVID-led, economy-led, but businesses that have been around a long while that are no longer viable, that are just not working anymore, don't fit that model, they might own that premises. They're now thinking about how to repurpose that premises. What's the best way of getting something further from this facility?
Yeah.
So I think seeing businesses in that position where they're having to now transition and pivot and diversify away from their old core to a new core within their business has been a high volume of those types of inquiries, I think.
It's worked on one with, they're all working from home in this large office now, so they don't use the ground floor area, so we've just converted that all to self-storage.
Oh, wow, okay.
As a way to recoup the funds lost from having what was a very busy office.
Yeah, of course.
No longer.
And I think we with the pressure on planning and the fact that you getting new space to develop is actually quite tricky, and combined with sustainability, there's a lot more old buildings being considered to be turned into self-storage. A good example, one of our members has just taken an old cinema that had been converted into a bingo hall. So you've essentially got a bingo hall on the ground floor with 80-foot high ceilings, and they're basically going to build a self-storage place and then resite the bingo hall on as a ceiling. So really innovative use of the space. No new footprint in the city centre, but it's right in the middle of everything, and you've got all of those people drawn into that building for now a mixed-use development. So real innovation, and the planners absolutely loved it.
Yeah, we're finding that. We're finding the planners are a lot easier to deal with when it comes to self-storage, because it's
Well,
I
it's
think
great.
it's an easy thing for
Low traffic, not many vehicles coming to site. There's low volume of people visiting the site and so on.
And it's repurposing all buildings, give them a new lease of life.
Exactly. When historically, when you think of it being warehouses on industrial estates, that still is happening, and that still is the case. But you've also got this sort of wave of newer people coming in. They're looking at all the old shops that are closing down and things like that. Wilkinson, I had a customer a little while ago, was looking at a Wilco's in the town centre to repurpose as a self-storage facility. So, as these sort of shops are becoming available, that's becoming viable. But being more city centre or town centre, it makes the room smaller and things like that to try and make it a bit more urban. People are trying all sorts of things at the minute, which is great, really.
I think one thing I like that I've seen definitely over the last year, is the way that people are trying to diversify not just the self-storage business itself, but other businesses on that same complex, trying to build a community.
Yeah.
And rather than just using the marketing engine to increase the footfall, they're now on the same locations, even the same buildings, putting in puddle courts and golf simulators. And
Well, that'll always work. I have a golf simulator on my storage site. No one really wanted to rent it. I just play golf down there.
But I think seeing what people are doing as an overall portfolio of that site, we now know of a lot of sites being built where there's a Costa next door that's being built, and a Lidl, and there might be a sports centre. And it seems like self-storage has now moved into that realm of being quite a prime location, mixed with all these industry-leading offerings and businesses to the
It's being moved into that retail factor marketplace, isn't it? Being brought into people's eyesight as when they do their everyday shopping, somewhere within their eye line there's going to be a self-storage facility.
And it's also that link with the fact that it's a nurturing site for micro businesses. People that have moved off their kitchen table or out their spare room, moving into self-storage because it's relatively low cost. It's right in the city centre, so it's easy to get to, and it allows them a lot of flexibilities to scale up or down, or indeed switch it off if they need to.
Yes. Yeah.
So that side of things, again, with those planners in mind, we need to get that message across to the planners to say we are creating the businesses of tomorrow as an industry, rather than just, we just store people's golf clubs for them. Yeah. There's a lot more to it than just that side of things.
And we know that everyone's a bit more transient nowadays, and I've got small business users that are Amazon sellers, and they use the unit to fulfill the orders and so on. Now, they wouldn't get the covenant to get a warehouse, and they also wouldn't need a warehouse because half a year they need 400 square foot. The rest of the year they don't need half that space. So it's great for that.
Yeah, I've in my sort of first 100 days tour around the industry, a lot of the self-storage places I've been into where I've seen people at work with the doors open, it's been people that are clearly reselling stuff, they're bringing it from China, they're repackaging stuff. I mean, that as a micro business is absolutely ideal for self-storage, and it's something that we want to try and get a message out to people to say, here is an opportunity for you to scale up your business through self-storage.
So the larger operators, say Store and Big Yellow, they have specific departments that look after multi-site users. Mm-hmm. So Rent-A-Kill, for example, they will take a room in every single Big Yellow or a Safe Store around the country.
Yeah, makes sense.
And if they employ someone else in a different location, they open up another one in a separate location. It's a great way of doing it.
It just adds such a wide variety of uses. There's so many uses for self-storage. And we just need to let everybody know what you can do with these facilities.
But coming back to that point about people's expectations of what self-storage is, I mean, when I've been talking to people about, what association are you running now, and I tell them, and that their preconceptions about self-storage and the fact that it is one thing or another to them, it's either, it's just somewhere you put your Christmas tree, or actually, yes, my mate built a business up from that. But they're remembering it how it was 20 years ago. And the sort of bashed up tin and dark, dingy corridors with water dripping from the ceiling. Mm-hmm. And then I've shown people sort of pictures off my phone of some of the award entries that we've had in. And they're like, oh my God, that looks amazing. It looks really, people that have done a kind of a sci-fi theme, or they've you picking up your turn, the boutique hotels. You go into some of those receptions and you could be checking in at a hotel.
That's right.
It's not self-storage at all, and really nice environments. So that's got to be really positive about making a space that people want to keep coming back to and they want to stay there.
It's that welcoming factor, isn't it? It's when people get there, they really feel like they're important to that business. And obviously, if you can demonstrate the security of the site and you become the custodians for a short period of time or even a long period of time of people's worldly goods, you really are then, on a retail factor looking very, very smart, and they will stay with you for a very, very long time.
Yeah, it's a huge trust relationship, isn't it? That I used to work in the jewelry industry, and that was all about convincing people that you were the right people to buy the engagement ring or the wedding ring from, because this was a once in a lifetime purchase,
thing, yes.
and they're trusting an operator with their irreplaceable goods. It may not be worth a lot of cash, but their children's paintings from when they were 6.
The emotional attachment.
Exactly, and to be able to trust somebody with that, you've got to have that consistency of that trust brand all the way through the relationship. You spoke earlier on about the websites that a lot of people buy from the website, but it's how do you maintain that relationship and that trust brand?
Half the battle is that a lot of people buy off a website now, and you need to tell the correct message on the website to differentiate yourself between, or educate the customer who may not be educated between the difference between a container and an indoor site. That said, if I was a container site, I'd sell it against an indoor site. So,
but I think there's benefits to both sides, isn't there? Yeah. You've got the horses for courses, and for some people, a container is absolutely perfect. I mean, for others, it'll always be, well, that's completely wrong for my needs. They need something that's a very different offer, but it's about positioning that offer with the public when the awareness is still relatively low. I mean, it was, I think we were saying before that it started off at like 3 or 4% awareness. Mm-hmm. It's near 40-50%, but still half of the population don't understand what self-storage is, and just drive past these big boxes every day and go, oh, I wonder what's behind there. Maybe we need to do open days and maybe get people in through the door and say, this is what we're all about.
I used to do art exhibitions down the corridor. Used to hang out all the way down the corridor.
Yeah, because they do lend themselves to be galleries, of course, don't they?
Yeah, I've seen someone do an indoor market on the ground floor of the facility. So they thought we were bunting out and had all of the market traders, had a unit, put a little shop out the front, they're selling their goods. You can walk into their unit and all the stock was in there. But it was really cool to bring a market back to the community, which is something that's completely dying. But it brought a lot of footfall into the facility. A lot of the general public, I've go to a market, but what I've actually found is there's something else that'd be really useful for me in our lives. That third bedroom that's full of absolute junk every day and every year. We can now move all that out at a relatively low cost and free up the space in a house we're paying a huge amount of money for. So I think that's changed as well. And I think going back to the diversification of different premises and buildings. I mean, Andy, you've been in this industry a long time. But what would you say is the strangest, weirdest, most memorable building, whether it converted or didn't? You were just an inquiry basis.
As you say, we've seen collectively things like buildings that you would never expect to see get converted, the railway arches, the potato processing plants, milking sheds from the cattle community. People have spent a lot of money cleaning these buildings up, but they are now totally unrecognisable for their former life, and now stand out as a gleaming beacon on people's horizons as to, a different process and a different animal, so to speak, in that area. It's really quite nice to see these old redundant buildings coming back to new life. It really is.
How are people getting that inspiration to convert to move to self-storage? Is it they're just going, I'm fed up with chicken farming or milk processing?
To be honest, I think there's been quite a few conversations I've had with people lately, particularly on the sort of farmer side, where the mums and the pops are retiring or gone or whatever, and it's the kids are coming through, and the kids don't want to work on a farm, and the pressures from the government and everything else. There doesn't seem to be a lot of money at the moment in that type of thing. So I think a lot of the time, a lot of my customers recently on farms particularly are there because it's the younger ones that are coming through going, I want to earn a passive income and spend my life on Instagram and everything else, and not have to work for a living. So, and they've already got the buildings there. That's a massive thing already. So things like farmers and removals and those kind of companies have already have the buildings to do it with. So they're almost a step ahead.
Yeah.
Any other entrant that's coming into the market.
And with agricultural planning, I think things are a little bit more lax.
Sorry, saying, it's a bit of an easier entry into the market, isn't it?
There's an active push as well to diversify farms and keep the history of farms going, and complements the farm's activities by using that barn that perhaps isn't being used, is covered in weeds and just has an old tractor sitting inside it.
Yeah, and then you've got the farm shop. So when people are dropping stuff off at their unit, they can go and buy some eggs and stay with the farm. And it's kind of it's the sort of crossover that benefit as well. Yeah, that's really
one of my recent customers. They're predominantly a caravan storage. They've got quite a bit of lands. They do a lot of caravan storage. We're just in the process of building a purpose-built barn for self-storage. The next step is they're going to do a cafe by the side of the road as well. So they're going to drive people in through the cafe. Oh, by the way, we do caravan storage and self-storage while you're here. And then it goes back to what you were saying earlier of it. There's other ways to drive traffic into the facility if you've got the space and the abilities to do it with.
Yeah, I think to go back on what you asked, Simon, I think the cost of entry of looking at a new build prime location is hard. It's difficult now. Borrowing is becoming more and more difficult for people, and what you have to leverage from the outset is increased. And so I think the option for some of the market to look at a prime location warehouse or a very big old, whether it be a B&M or as you said a Woolworths or whatever it is high street right on the roadside, loads of visibility. It's very, very expensive. So it changes the viability model of self-storage for some clients. So I think people are now getting a little bit more educated and thinking, well, I already have the access to the site or the land, which is a big plus. You're already quite far down that journey then if you have the building or the land. But I think they're now exploring that what is my barrier to entry? What have I got to get this business to fruition? And then what net does that give me? These are the types of buildings I can now look at. So does this work? Looking at a barn, does that work? Looking at an old shop, does that work? Looking at the railway arch or the basement. Let's explore whether this is going to work for self-storage. And we've got to say a lot of the time it will when it does. We've converted a huge variety of different premises and they all have gone on to be very successful self-storage businesses. So I think economy is driving some of the diversification. And then I just think the volume of investors and people getting a little bit more savvy now with savings and money and what the returns that they want to get back off of their finances. And self-storage should be top 5 on your list for investments going forward because the return is very strong.
So you've got, in the past it was always people looking for exits at the end, but you've now got a new culture of people coming through that are looking for a passive or day-to-day income. They're not looking for that huge 20 times exit. They're looking for something that's sustainable over the next 20 years that generates a good reoccurring solid. They don't want to be millionaires. They just want a good passive income from that barn that is currently not creating any income.
Yeah.
So and that's what I spend a lot of the time with farmers. They're just looking for another way of generating income from the farm.
Yeah, and like I say, I think once the operator market starts to understand that I heard from a farmer that storing grain might get you sort of £4 per square foot per annum, £5 per square foot per annum. And when you convert that to the return of self-storage on average of sort of £27 to £29 per square foot per annum, it's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. So I think people that are even operating an existing business out of a premises at the moment, they're starting to look at their space differently. That quarter of the warehouse that was just used to store all of the stuff from that current business, it's now being chopped away and gotten rid of so that they can implement a smaller self-store facility in the overall operation of their existing business. And again, history through that is what we see is they only ever think they're going to do the first third of that building and operate another business. They start to understand I'm working very hard in this business and making X% and I'm not working too much harder than this one and making a lot more. So they start phasing the old businesses away and, growing the self-store element of their businesses until one of your value clients, Andy, started off at one phase and 7 phases later he's now got a huge self-store facility.
Absolutely.
And that was never the intention from that individual. That's just the way the market has gone and driven his demand for him. So
yeah,
I think it's fantastic to hear these stories about where people have gone. I think the caveat I would put is that it's not sort of like a California gold rush where everyone's going to make millions, because you've got to do it properly. Just like with the California gold rush, if you literally just rock up there in your t-shirt and boots, you're not going to have a good time. You've got to plan. You've got to bring the right equipment, and that's why working with suppliers from the industry is crucial to get it right. On some of the conversations I was having with some removals companies, I was saying, well, what's the local population around where you're looking to put this self-storage? And they've got no idea, hadn't even thought about that through. So it's really important to go through all of those stages. Talk to a planning expert. Will we get planning? As talked to a planner the other day, and he said, for 500 quid, I can probably save you £10,000, but he's got to ruin someone's dream there by telling him that. But I would rather those people didn't try it and come into the market, because that's going to waste their time and money, and also they're probably not going to do it properly. And that's my goal, is that everyone in the industry is doing self-storage right.
Yes.
The number one priority for us all, really. We want to keep excelling this industry and moving it forward. And I think that's what brings a lot of credibility to working with the likes of us and Charlie, other consultants in the industry, other suppliers within the industry. I think a bit of advice for me, when you definitely the early stage and start trying to identify a site, is just put value in the experience that's in the industry already.
Yeah.
Reach out to people, have the conversations, ask the questions that need to be asked, listen to advice, speak to people that have been there and done it. And I think there's a lot of credibility to working with, a trusted consultant. I think you might have to speculate at the beginning and spend a little bit of money. But I think in the long run, you're definitely going to value out of some of the mistakes you won't make.
And we've made them for them.
So you're going to get a quicker road to success, I think, working with the right group of individuals and suppliers on your business, for sure.
But also, one thing I've noticed about the industry is that it's a really open culture of sharing information.
That's very friendly industry.
Almost, I've not seen it almost any other sector I've worked in. The fact that because people are competing on a micro level, it's only really if you got somebody almost on the opposite corner of the crossroads from you, and they're actually your proper competition, as it were. So people from half an hour away will be really open. As an operator, they'll say, oh yeah, these are the mistakes I've made. And it's a really warm and giving industry. The suppliers are fantastic, but don't rule out just going down and talking to some operators.
Absolutely.
And everyone's really willing to share. I think it's a fantastic sector to get into, because while there are barriers to entry, the knowledge barrier is quite easy to get through, because you've got the likes of Kuboid and other suppliers in the sector. You also got the operators. Have those conversations.
From the SSA's perspective, then, what for someone who's coming new into the industry, what support do you offer in terms of your services?
Well, we offer, thanks to Salisbury, by the way. Well, we offer a subscriber membership, which is essentially you get support as an individual company. You get to come to our events. You can attend our webinars. So you get to find out. But we obviously put you in touch through our supplier directory with suppliers into the sector. We give advice over the phone. When you've got your first site and you're ready to make those steps up through kind of getting established and getting to the point where you're cutting the ribbon on day one, we'll help you as well through that process. So our goal is then to make you a full member, where you get access to the contracts, the legal outlines, all the other stuff which you need from when you're actually open to the public.
Yeah.
So it's a slow process. We have our trade show which will be in Telford in end of April. And there's a day devoted to those people that are starting out in the industry, and hope to get you guys along to sort of build on this and do other sorts of that as well.
Yeah, fantastic.
But yeah, it's just our goal is to make sure people are doing it right, and if we can get them doing it right from the outset, they haven't learned any bad habits. There's a European standard for this industry, and we want everyone to follow that, because that way, if the government decides they're going to regulate us, we can say, well, go after the cowboys. We're the safe pairs of hands. So if you're doing it right, and you've been talking to people from the start about doing it right, you're much less likely to fall foul of any regulation if it does come in. Touch wood, it doesn't.
I think one of the things that always surprises me, to be fair, that I've worked on some projects that have been rural based, and even attending sites, go meeting the clients over their site and do a bit of viability. I've driven up to this site. How the hell are you going to get anyone here? It's in the middle of absolutely nothing. To the point where I've even advised the clients that they're happy to go through this process and help you on the numbers and obviously give you a quote for your fit out. But I want to be honest, I don't know if this is the right location or not. You've got no through road. There's a very small population in the area. I'm not sure. And you know, the client's their decision that they wanted to push the button and try it. And you know, not only have they never come back to say it isn't working, they've subsequently moved into 3 other barns in the same premises. So while the experience that we have sometimes makes you think, you know, it works in most buildings, most locations, but no, I'm not even sure about this way. So then 6 months down the line, they're full and ready to place another order for another barn, and it's just, you know, it's gobsmacking in a way that that in theory you can put these in most locations with most types of buildings, and they'll be successful. You know, how many people do we have come back and tell us that they've failed? It isn't working.
Never, I never had anybody.
I've never in 20 years.
They always just tell me they wish they'd have done this sooner.
Absolutely. And when you're looking at the different types of buildings that we're looking at, locations, you know, I've done the sort of barns and rural farmland locations, and you know, I worked in a project in the Netherlands, which was a round car dealership. So it was a complete circle, and it was glass all the way around. Circles in self-storage, can't stand it. I swear all around it. And this was a circle, and all surrounded by glass. So from a design perspective, it was, you know, a real tricky job for our designers to maximise the yield of the site, which they did achieve. But you know, even seeing that building converted, you know, this was just after COVID, when car dealerships were non-existent. Everyone was buying cars online, and that was the way forward. You know, and this building become available and quite cheap because it was in a location that no one else really wanted. It would only really work for a car dealership. None of the other car dealerships wanted it because they also weren't selling from the forecourt. And it was a nous of my client to see it and see the vision of that site and think, you know, this could be really cool. This could look really cool and actually function as a really profitable self-storage. And so we did it and built it. And, you know, I think it's sitting above 95% occupied. It's got 2 floors and it's surrounded by glass. It's a fantastic site.
I've been involved in underground car parks of 2 or 3 levels deep, and every panel has had to be scribed into the floor because, as you can understand, it's just a never-ending decreasing level of angle down and lower into the ground. But they sell so well. They sell so well. So whether it's just 10 rooms or 100 rooms, 1,000 rooms, any space is good space. It's always got a purpose, whether it's a small basement, but if some residential flats, there's a purpose for 10 or 50 rooms. You know, any space that you can place some partition the system into, I'm confident will be a winner.
Charlie, tell me your experience. What's the weirdest one that you've ever come across, or the strangest one I've come to you with?
I mean, it still does well, but there's one where I would never store anything in. I'm not going to say where it is, but it leaks from a roof. A roof looks like it's leaking when it's not even raining. And that still does well. I don't know how, but it's just got a captive market. One in London where I'm 5'9", which is the UK average height, and it's not short. Just so you know, it's not short. You said a missed average UK, okay, all right, and I had to duck, so I don't know how anyone else adapted. Yeah, so
Is that limbo storage? Or is that?
yeah, there's some quirky ones out there. I've been to ones where it's just 4 rooms.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Didn't you look at the church? Was it a church?
Chapel. Chapel. That one's ongoing, but it's I think in total it's something like 15 rooms. It's not massive, and they've got a little mini mezzanine in there as well. So ground floor, first floor. We did one in Blackpool as well. That was 15 rooms. That had a little mini mezzanine in as well, on a little industrial estate in Blackpool. So yeah, there just seems to be a wealth of different approaches depending on what you want, and exactly what you said earlier, Simon, depending on what you want to get out of it. You know, there's almost a thought in the industry that you have to be a certain size to be profitable. Yeah, if you want to make loads of money and be a millionaire, yeah, you need that, you know, big portfolio and big buildings. But a customer in Blackpool, I said 15 rooms, he's using it as a pension pot, just that extra bit of income just to bolster his pension, and that's all he wants it for.
And as you mentioned, you had the bingo hall that you're aware of that gets converted, and many of these retail places or leisure places have closed down and been revitalised just by, you know, converting to self-storage facilities.
Yeah, if you can find it somewhere where it's a little bit run down, but they're generally those areas they're starting to build flats into. So you've got a captive population there. Often a university will be expanding in if it's on the edge of a town or city centre. You've got a population pool there who are all living in small places. They've got lots of stuff. It's ideal for self-storage. Most people who are listening to this now will know somewhere locally to them that would make a great self-storage place. If they stop and think about it now, I bet they can go, yeah, actually, we could put one there. Well, talk to some experts and see if you can turn that into a reality.
So what do you think's stopping them from doing that? What do you think that next step is that stops those people? And I think, no.
Is it they now seeing the sort of retail side of things and think that's probably a step too far for them?
I think we need to be aware that it is a reasonably large upfront cost, and then it does pay back in quite a slow period. So it only grows at about £1,000 a month. So that is a big barrier. You have to have a large pot to cover the cash flow and get the property and pay the deposit.
Yeah.
But that's probably the biggest barrier to a personal investor.
Cool. Okay, so we've obviously spoken about self-storage, where it was and where it's come to now. We've spoken about the different types of buildings that we can see self-storage in, the lots of inquiries we get, and really there's no real limitation to self-storage and where self-storage can go. Can we talk finally about sort of saturation and oversaturation? Because it is a question that does come up quite a lot, especially from new people coming into the market. Is this the right thing for me? Am I just oversaturating the market? Is it going to be a success? So, I mean, I'll come to Andy first, actually.
As Simon quite rightly said, if I went back 15 years, only 3% of the population knew about self-storage. Simon says today it's new as sort of...
It's 40 to 50. Yeah.
So it's growing, but there's still another 60% of the population that doesn't know. So I still think there's a long way to go with self-storage to meet the demands as the awareness grows.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think you're right with the awareness side of it. The more people know about self-storage, the more people use self-storage, and that creates more demand for self-storage. And actually, so 20 years ago, before anyone knew about self-storage, when I had a 30,000 square foot site in Cambridge, we thought we were saturating the market with that bigger site. Now there's about...
In Cambridge,
it's about 150,000 square foot in a metre of... and so it's, as the education has grown, the availability has grown as well.
But we also, the population is always growing this way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think our main restrictions are really space. When you compare us to Australia or the States, where they're at sort of 10-12% of their population using self-storage regularly, we're never going to get to that because we won't be able to meet that demand. But if we're at sort of 3-4% now, if we got to 7-8%, that's doubling the market. So there's still a lot of space to go for.
Yeah, we also maintain the rates. We need to maintain the rates to a certain point.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, you've got to drive around London and you see all the big boys all next to each other on the same street or the same corners, and they all seem to still be able to operate and things.
But it's also in tandem with the fact that, like we've said earlier, with new house build, they do not build any storage.
No, they don't.
And therefore, as a nation of hoarders or emotional attachment to things, we cannot look to throw things away. We look for a safe haven to put these places, and there's only one answer to this, and that is self-storage.
Yeah. And the workforce is becoming more transient, aren't they? So they're moving around a lot more and not having a set base, because that whole bricks and mortar buying a house isn't as fashionable as it used to be.
And it's not as open to people either.
Exactly.
So I think people are going to... bring up a generation of renters or people that are going to combine their earnings to buy a house between multiple people, maybe 4 different people buying a house together, which will mean they've got less common space, less space to store their stuff, so they're going to need that self-storage. The houses that we're building, the flats that we're building, you can barely get a wardrobe in the bedroom. Yes, I've looked at someone and gone, oh my God, no. So again, that need for self-storage is always going to be there.
Yeah.
It's about having that close enough to those people where they can see that as a viable option, and they're not putting it in the garage. Maybe we need to get those golfing simulator guys to just convert everyone's garage to a golf simulator. They can't use it for self-storage.
I think that's the thing. Well, we must all have friends that are all moving out to Dubai and different countries and so on, but I guarantee they leave stuff in the UK because their end plan is to come back at some point. And that is quite a lot of my customers nowadays, which is that transient society of people moving around.
Yeah, and people who've got maybe 2 homes, or they're always on holiday in the southwest, so they want to leave their surfing gear down there, and rather than trekking it back into central London. That's a great market as well.
Mm-hmm. Self-storage has certainly been, for those that already have the awareness and those that don't, it's now become part of people's lifestyles. There is a cost, but it just gets absorbed because they know they need the space. So on a monthly income, the cost is negligent because they've got nowhere else to put the stuff, and they need to store it.
Well, it's the sunk cost, isn't it? That they don't want to get rid of that stuff, whether it's got an emotional attachment or a utility value to them. So they're going to keep that stuff, and they're not going to fill their house with it because they're used to having a spare room,
Yes.
not a junk store.
Yeah.
So the more we can do to convince people and raise that awareness of what self-storage is and how valuable it is to them, how it solves some of their problems, the better. It's going to just expand. It's going to grow the pie. It's a phrase I keep using about the industry. But what we're seeing is more and more people either joining the association or coming to our events, like the conference mentioned in Telford. And the Fletcher event. I mean, Fletcher in Dublin this year got record numbers because people are drawn to the industry and they want to do it right. They want to learn from the sector. So that's a great opportunity to get people doing it right. And if all of those operators are out there talking about self-storage, that's going to ripple out through society. We've all got a role to play to raise that awareness.
Absolutely.
Go to the pub. Talk to 10 people. You've got a messianic about self-storage. Tell people about it, and they'll go, "Oh yeah."
I lost you. It goes to the pub, so my mind just went then. But we're locked in, aren't we?
Yeah, we're already like.
That's very good. Excellent, superb. So in terms of the sort of saturation question, then we're not at saturation point yet. We're probably a long way from saturation point. There's only half the population really understanding what self-storage is and less of it even using it. So yeah, I think for any new entrant, it's not to be put off by thinking there's an oversaturation. Yeah, be wary of competitors in an area, wary of where you are, location, but ultimately don't let that put you off.
Yeah, and don't have the ability to not find the perfect site,
Yeah.
which is a 60,000 square foot warehouse for your people, you know.
Yeah.
If there's that little unit that's local, it's got a nice demographic, you know, and it fits with your budget, fits with your model, there's no reason on the face of it can't be converted to self-storage. There's no reason.
I agree.
Yeah. Most towns now are almost doubling in size because they're building houses at such a rate. Those are small houses. It's local population's being increased, and people don't want to drive far to use self-storage. So that you've got a growing market. Talk to your planners locally, talk to the council and say, well, what's happening around here? That'll give you an indication about where locally is going to expand. But it doesn't have to be local to you. It's just that you've got that local knowledge.
Yeah, of course.
So there's definitely more people can do now to start that journey off. And watching this video is a good start.
Yeah, excellent, superb, brilliant. Well, thank you for everyone for coming along. Thanks to Charlie. Cool, shake your head, Charlie. I'd love to say that's already older. Thanks to Charlie, thanks to Simon, and of course thanks to Chris and Andy. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much for watching, guys. That was our first episode of a series that we're going to be rolling out. As you saw and heard, the first topic was heavily involved and focused on the diversification of different sites that you could look at for your business, your self-storage business. And we'd like to think that what we've evidenced, what we've all discussed here today, really opens up the horizons for you on what type of buildings you can look at. You know, most sites will work for self-storage. Whether they're financially viable as you go through your business model is one thing, but we hope we've given you some positive outlooks on, you know, identifying a site that could work for you. And the examples that you've heard should hopefully give you the confidence that the right site is out there for you to go and get, and hopefully it will work. You know, we will be rolling this series out. We've got episode 2 coming along shortly, and that's going to be including one of our clients. He's an absolute fantastic entrepreneur, owns and operates many businesses, and has had to pivot and diversify a lot within his journey, his business journey. One of those diversifications, one of those pivoting factors was self-storage. And that started off in a smaller way and has grown organically into a very large proportion of his portfolio. So really, really interesting to hear from that individual and the collective that we'll have around that discussion. So join us next time. I'm sure you're going to get lots of information out of the second episode as you did the first one. We hope you really enjoyed it. You know, we've really enjoyed presenting this to you guys and hopefully educating and supporting new entrants into the market in a much bigger way. So thank you very much for joining us. But right now, there's been enough talking, enough work. It's time to hit the bar. Cheers, guys.